Being nice is immoral. Okay, I'm obviously being hyperbolic with that, but I thought I'd start this video out with a bold statement like that. Obviously, I do believe in a certain degree of common courtesy when dealing with people, especially people I don't know. But I think as a society, we've become far too fucking nice, and we've cared way too much about feelings. This is going to be one of the more controversial Red-Eye Raws, by the way, because I'm just going to be fucking honest. Which, honesty is tantamount to controversy nowadays. But yeah, I think as a society, we've become far too nice in dealing with people. And it's made us weaker for it. It's something that I've felt for a long time and thought about doing a Red-Eye Raw in a while for a long time, but finally decided to get around to doing it. For instance, one thing we do far too often is, participation awards and stuff like that, where everyone's a winner, which is just stupid. There's winners and there's losers, okay? And everyone's going to be a loser at some point in their life. You have to fail in order to grow from that failure. One of the things I used to try and do on this channel was avoid talking about controversial subjects. It was funny. It was a weird era on my channel where I decided, hey, I was going to be a pussy and not express my opinion on certain things, right? That's been long since over. Obviously, ever since I started openly talking about things on Red-Eye Raw, I've been much more open to just saying what I think and not giving a shit what people think. And I've only lost a couple subscribers for it, because it is what it is, and people seem to more or less not care, which is great. But, on top of that, one thing that really helped me do that was the Rio video, right? There was that whole video I did about Rio Asuka from Devilman. I said he wasn't gay, he's not gay, he's a hermaphrodite, his female half is attracted to Akira, he's two people fused together. And people got mad and started calling me transphobic and shit, and whatever, I don't care. I did get beat up about it for a second, because I actually tried to respond and justify things and explain to people. Because I was still being stupid and going under the assumption that these people are rational, which they're not. Because their concept of gender is complete and total non sequitur. Gender and sex are effectively the same thing. I don't give a shit what people say. And that's going to be one that's going to be controversial. I don't care. When the prominent members of your ideology, some of your big people who pushed it forward to get it to what it is, mutilated children and had them do stuff with their brother. I'm talking about John Money. If you don't know who that is, he's this guy. He did all these fucking horrible experiments on these twins. I would encourage people to look into it. It's pretty fucked up. No, I used to grant the gender and sex are different thing. I used to grant it for sake of argument, right? I don't do that anymore. Frankly, I don't bother having those discussions because I consider people who are like that far gone not worth my time. Let me be clear, as a libertarian type, right, someone who believes in personal freedoms, if someone wants to call themselves something, I don't care, but I'm not going to call them that. That's how it goes. They can't compel me to do it, I can't compel them to acknowledge reality. So that said, I still have a right to say what the fuck I want, and they have the right to say the stupid shit they want. That was one issue, right? And that's a controversial one nowadays, because everyone's so careful to try and not hurt people's fucking feelings. Where they act like everything is like a thing to do with gender, which it just isn't. Like, people act like every trait of their fucking personality makes them into something different, which is fucking stupid. And it's funny to me that people who don't like labels are so keen to label themselves. Makes no fucking sense to me. But that's not the only thing I think about being nice, being immoral. I think, to a degree, bullying is should be encouraged and should happen. Like, I don't mean, like, people should be beaten up on a daily basis and things like that, but certain degrees of kind of mocking people and things like that at a young age, I think is very important, because it toughens you up and makes you actually be able to deal with shit. Because when you're babied and pampered your whole fucking life, you're not going to be prepared for the real world. As I said, I do believe in a certain degree of common courtesy, especially when it comes to strangers, right? I'm not going to run up to someone on the street and start harassing them. I'm not going to go tell someone what I think of them when I don't fucking know them. Because frankly, if I don't know you, I don't give a shit. Do what the hell you want. But one thing I do is when I have friends, I typically am much harsher on them than I am with people who I don't know. When I have friends, I constantly criticize, deride, and mock them, as they do to me, as I want them to do to me. That is how you grow. It's also, like, I think the more I respect someone, the more willing I am to be honest with them. So that's why, with my friends in particular, I'm very harsh. I'm very nasty at times with the way I deal with them. I'm very blunt and honest. And, the friends that I have that matter actually can deal with it. And, you know, granted, some of them it takes some adjustment. And, you know, maybe sometimes I need to tune it down just a smidge. But I think for the most part, it's worked. It's the way I am, it's the way I operate, and it's the way I think everyone should operate. If you respect someone and you notice an issue with them, you should absolutely bring it to their attention. That's called being a good friend. Another thing is if people are just told what they're doing is great and that they can't, like, you're great, you're amazing, it's perfect. You're not going to strive for anything better, so you're holding back your real potential. That's why I really like that movie Whiplash with J.K. Simmons. I really like that quote where he says the two most dangerous words in the English language are good job. There's also that Tom MacDonald song, New World Order, that has that really good line, good job, you lose, here's your medal. Again, you shouldn't get points for participation. Merit is an important thing. And you know what? All of us are going to fail. All of us are going to come up short. We all could use improvement, myself included, yourself included. I don't care who you are. I don't care how great you are. I don't care if you're the peak embodiment of humanity. You can improve. I also think it's wrong to provide undue help to people who haven't tried to help themselves. You know, you can't help people who don't want to help themselves. Like, I don't have a problem with helping someone who's at their wit's end and has tried really hard, and you want to help them out. And I think charity in and of itself can be a very honorable thing. But I think that you need to really think about it. And, like, I'm not saying don't do charity, because charity's a whole other... I don't personally do a whole lot of charity. Mainly because I don't trust a lot of places that run charities, because I don't know where the fuck the money's going. But like homeless people, for instance. A lot of them are homeless because of personal choices. Whether that be drug abuse, whether that be mental illness. I mean, granted, mental illness isn't necessarily a personal choice, although in some ways I think it kind of is. I think if you have a mental issue, seek help. Even then, that's something also, and this is going to be somewhat contradictory, and I fully acknowledge the, maybe, inconsistency with this, so fair enough, but I also don't really have a lot of faith in a lot of therapy nowadays. I think it can work for some people. I think there's plenty of people who have been helped greatly by it, but I think a lot of therapy is a bunch of hokey nonsense that doesn't help people and just makes you want to seek validation and tries to give it to you. Because I've had therapy before, right? And all they do is try and tell you that your feelings are valid. You need to be validated. You need to acknowledge it. You acknowledge your feelings. Fuck all that. Just tell someone to toughen the fuck up. Like, granted, I realize that's not an end-all be-all, and there might be some people who have to work through some hard shit, and there's, like, trauma and things you have to deal with. I get that. Okay, that's the kind of thing that I'm like, okay, therapy, sure, whatever. But one of the problems I have with modern therapy is all they do is push you towards believing your own fucking mind all the time with some of the nonsense you think. Delusion is encouraged now. Again, hence back to trans activism. I don't care about trans individuals. I'm talking about trans activism and the concept of transgenderism. A lot of therapists will just push people into it. I know because my brother's friend, not really my friend, although I think he's cool, was trans for a while. And he's not anymore because he came to his senses. But he didn't want to be in the fucking first place. His therapist told him he was, and told him he should just embrace it. When he said, no, I just want to feel comfortable with who I am, what I was born with. And they said, no, you don't have to do that. You can alter your perception based on your mind. It's like, dude, the guy's trying to actually be comfortable in reality. And you're telling him to live in fucking fantasy land. Thank God he's actually back to normal now. Like, granted, I thought he was smart and great the whole time. Like, granted, I never had a problem with him even when he was going through that identity crisis. Because, in all fairness, he was chill about it. He didn't care that I didn't call him she and her. He didn't care. Hence why I went out of my way to not be a dick about it. Because he was chill about it. But that said, And also, he wasn't, like, my friend, so I wasn't, like, super close enough to really want to criticize him and deride him and stuff, because I only knew him when I hung out with my brother and his friends, right? But he was cool. But the way my brother puts it is they bullied him back into being normal. And, I think to an extent you need that. You need to be bullied a little bit. And not just for that reason, because again, that's ultimately just one issue. I do think it's a dangerous issue because the ideology is encouraging people to believe their own delusions and embrace fantasies. I view using someone's pronouns that are not in line with reality, just to make them feel better, as a form of enabling. I think if you want to do it, great. I'm not, because I don't believe in compelling your speech either. And I think they have a right to be crazy. I'm just not going to enable it. And I don't compromise by calling them by their fake name they want to be called. I have a completely different compromise where I just don't address them. And I've gotten very good at that. I've gotten very good at talking to people without having to address them. I don't have to do it very often. Because, in all fairness, I don't have to deal with a lot of trans individuals. And if I had a friend that was trans, I'd still be their friend. I don't have a problem with that. If I was really close to them, I'd probably be perfectly honest with them and tell them what I think. But that's a whole other discussion for another day, because that hasn't happened yet. Like, I have friends of friends that are trans. And again, my brother's friend was temporarily before he came to his senses. But again, that's far from the only issue. A lot of problems with being too nice is people get so comfortable with you being nice, they think every thought and opinion they have is valid. And that's not just on the concept of innocuous things such as identity, where you try to define yourself by arbitrary traits and feelings, where I think that's doing a disservice to yourself. I think you're much more than that. I think each individual is an individual, and individuals are complicated and can't be narrowed down to a quote-unquote identity. And I'm using identity in that colloquial sense. Obviously, identity is a term that can mean many other things, but you know what I mean. And you know what? I'll go on the other side of the spectrum, too, because although I consider myself to be, you know, not atheist, more agnostic, right? And I do think that a lot of atheists can be kind of very ideological with it in their own sense. I also acknowledge fully how crazy religious people can be at times. You wouldn't believe how many arguments I've had with family members and friends that are hardcore in their religion, and then they try to use that for me on regular everyday logic. And granted, I usually win those arguments, because everyone around here is Mormon, and I know that religion better than a lot of them do, because I was hardcore Mormon for a long time. And I think that there's a lot of craziness that comes on that side, too. And that's why I can be kind of a dick to them, too, when I'm dealing with that, when I'm pointing out why that logic doesn't work in argument, especially when we're not talking about, you know, esoteric theological things like that. So, I think that there's definitely multiple areas of life where delusion is encouraged, and sometimes by different groups. Although I don't play the both sides argument anymore. That's a fallacy. There is definitely an imbalance right now. And trying to believe in, like, horseshoe theory and whatever is just trying to not pick sides because you're a fucking pussy. That's my opinion. I think it's totally fine with trying to be objective and not trying to be ideological, which I actually think is better. But I do think if you're being objective, if you're being truly objective, you're not going to have the "but my horseshoe theory" ideology. Which is why I think South Park's been falling flat lately, because they're so bent up on sticking with that. They never take a very strong stance on anything. Which is fair. I still like South Park. I haven't watched any of the newest season. In fact, I'm several episodes behind. Okay, sorry about that. Had to clear up a bunch of space on my phone, because there's a lot of old video files on here that don't need to be anymore, and it was taking up a lot of room. Anyway, as I was saying, I still watch South Park. Haven't watched since the second COVID special. I think the vaccination special is the last episode I've seen. And because none of the others have appealed to me. I still will probably go back and watch all the rest. I just haven't got around to watching it in a while. Again, I think they played it too safe a lot recently, and it's just been kind of pussy to my taste, but, you know, whatever. But yeah, I think that we far too much focus on feelings, when it's like, yeah, emotion can be something that matters to people, and I do think we all have emotions, we all can get emotional. And I don't typically feel outrage. It's not really something that comes up to me. Like, there are things I get mad about. There are things that I think should be, you know, spoken out against. And in fact, there was a video that Shrouded Hand did, actually, which shout out to Shrouded Hand again, because he's a great YouTuber. But he did a video about the murder of this kid named, what was it? Arthur Labinjo Hughes, that was his name. It was this 4-year-old whose dad and stepmom would, like, starve him, and, like, when they would feed him, they'd give him so much salt that the food was inedible, and then, like, the stepmom, and, like, they would make him stand at attention for, like, 14 hours a day, not being able to move, which really fucks up your muscles if you can't move at all. Then they made him sleep on the floor. Actually, he was 6, not 4, but regardless, either way, it's horrible. But yeah, he went through that for a long time, and then the stepmom gave him, like, a lethal amount of salt, and then when he started having a seizure, she, like, repeatedly bashed his head on the ground until he died. And that video was the first time in a fat minute that I have genuinely felt searing outrage. Like, it's the angriest I've been in a while. Like, not counting things that have happened to me personally. What I'm saying is, that is the angriest a video has ever made me. And there's a few others, like Casey Anthony. That was one that made me pretty angry. But typically, those tugging at the heartstrings, trying to make me feel for something don't get to me. But when it's things like that, sometimes they can. But yeah, I think it's pathetic the way everyone nowadays seeks validation and attention. It's like, can't you just be valid for your own purposes? Like, make something of yourself. The only person whose opinion that matters should be your own. That's not to say that you can't value input from friends, because I think you absolutely should, especially criticism. But at the end of the day, your opinion of yourself is the only one that should affect you at the end of the day. Like, I mean, obviously, little things here and there. Your friends are influences on you. Your family are influences on you. And what they say to you should matter to you, provided they're giving actual valid information and criticism. But again, that's a whole other topic. Or is it? I guess it's kind of the same topic, since I'm talking about not being nice, and I think that you should criticize those you care about. But I think that we've lived in a very luxurious life, right? We have lived without real problems, so we have to invent a bunch of new ones. I think that there could be dark times coming upon us very soon, depending on how things play out in the world. And, you know, they do say hard times make strong men, so hopefully that'll happen. Like, not hopefully the bad things will happen, but hopefully if it does, we get through it and we get a much stronger and better society. Because we've lived so well for so long, we've become, well, pussies. I remember I did an episode of Captain Shame about this years ago, right, which was the precursor to Sergeant Friends, where I had Sergeant Bastard talking about how we live in a generation of pussies. And that was one of the ones that I was kind of speaking from the heart to an extent. Like, I exaggerated it, saying we need to conquer the world for American supremacy, which, obviously, not something I believe in. I don't think we should conquer the world. I think that, as I said, I'm very non-interventionalist, so I exaggerated it with that. And I felt much more comfortable doing that with Sergeant Bastard, because he's a character, than I did expressing my actual political opinions at the time, which obviously I'm much more willing to do now, hence why I've got that in the background in a lot of my videos, and hence why I'm so willing to talk about controversial subjects and say what the fuck I want. There's certain topics I won't talk about because YouTube, but I, for the most part, talk about whatever I want. But that's another problem we run into, right, is that people don't believe in objective reality, and I guess me segueing into that wasn't the most natural, because I kind of started the thought in my head, and then just kind of completed it there, so apologies on that. I just realized how people are going to be like, did you just change the subject and act like you were moving on naturally? Yeah, sorry, my bad. But it goes hand in hand. People don't believe in objective reality a lot anymore. There are things that are objectively true. And people try to act like perception is just reality. I used to be a proponent of that when I was younger. But the thing is, if perception is reality, then go and fucking fly. Do it right now. Oh, that's right, you fucking can't, because there are objective laws of physics. And my reason for bringing that in is because we're so nice to people, we let them believe, you know, nice falsehoods where they don't believe in objective reality anymore. They think that what they think and feel inside is reality. And then you end up with people like Chris Chan. Look at him. He's fucking crazy. I love Chris Chan. I don't love what he did, but he was a constant source of entertainment for me. Obviously, things took a dark turn in recent time with what he did to his mom and the fact that he's in jail for it now, which he should be. I hope he gets some help in there, because Chris Chan is a mess. But I hope that therapists don't just, encourage his insanity. Because Chris Chan is the natural end result of being nice and coddling people as a society. What happened to Chris Chan could happen to a lot more people, and it does on a regular basis. We wind up with crazy people all the time who are told that their insanity is correct, just because everyone is too afraid of being mean to tell them, hey, no, that's fucking crazy, you're wrong. Although, in fairness, I think one could also argue the opposite of what I'm saying here, and I'm gonna acknowledge that, because I don't want people to, think that I'm not self-aware. I realize that Chris Chan was bullied, trolled, and harassed constantly. I realize that people tried to actively ruin his life every single day. I realized that his life was made a living hell. And I realized that the bullying that was done to Chris Chan is what turned him into what he is. So let me acknowledge that, and maybe back up slightly. I do think that is the opposite end of the spectrum. That's when bullying goes too far. But I also think the reason that he was able to come to a lot of his new conclusions is because he would reach out and find other people that would enable his insanity. Some of them were doing it from a place of kindness. Admittedly, a lot of others were doing it to manipulate him, like the idea guys and whatnot, so I realize that Chris Chan probably isn't the best example for my point here. Chris Chan is when bullying goes too far. There's a difference between bullying and trying to ruin someone's life. There's a difference between trolling and genuine harassment. I don't like the term harassment, because I think most of the time it's a fallacy. I think people use it as an excuse just because people are saying mean things. But when you're actively trying to destroy someone's life, like people did with Chris Chan, with doxing him, filming videos of him doing things to a sex doll and then leaking them online, and, recording phone calls and shit, I think that Chris Chan, it was too far. So, I guess there does need to be a balance. I think there is a certain value in having common decency as a person, but you don't want to enable people either. And I think with Chris Chan, it was a combination of enabling from some, encouraging maliciously from others, and bullying from others. So again, Chris Chan's more complicated. I do think it was a little bit unfair for me to try and say that he was completely formed by people being nice, because the more I thought about it, the more I realized that's kind of not true. Chris Chan's life was made hell online. What the hell am I talking about? But I do think that my ideas still stand, and I do think that Chris Chan was enabled by a lot of other people to think the things he thought. And in fairness, I think Chris Chan was too crazy even for some of the loonier activists. I think a lot of them didn't like Chris Chan because they didn't like him being associated with their movement. But that's something I could go on another thing, is that's the internet. That's one of the big negatives of the internet. But we're not really talking about technology and the internet this video, so I might save that for a different video at a different time. But I will just say, I do think the internet has made us worse in a lot of ways, because it's brought out the crazy in a lot of us, and it's brought out the malicious in a lot of us too. Again, here I am advocating being mean, but there's a difference between being mean and being sadistic. There's a difference between being mean and being a total sadist, and the internet has also turned a lot of us into sadists. I do think that there is a balance that does need to be achieved in order to build a polite society. You need to have people be rude and crass, but you also do need to balance it out with a certain level of decency. But don't let that decency blind you and let you become an enabler, let you become taken advantage of, or to let you be manipulated into doing things that you wouldn't normally do. I've rambled a lot here. I've been kind of all over the place. I've contradicted myself a couple of times, which I will fully acknowledge, because I'm an honest person. I realize when I fuck up, these are unedited. So again, me bringing up Chris Chan, stupid move on my part, but it got me moving on to another topic, and bringing in the concept that you do need a balance. But I do think that ultimately, as a society, we are too nice, and being too nice allows malicious people to gain control. Because a lot of people will play to the fact that they think you're going to be nice, and they think you're going to be decent to them, because they know they can manipulate you. I remember, there was this homeless guy that walked up to me one time, who asked me for money, and I'm like, I don't carry cash, which didn't used to be true. It used to be just be an excuse. But then he, like, still tried to get me, like, I had the window rolled up on my car, right? And he, like, kept encouraging me to, like, roll it down and was getting, like, up in my face. And it's like, dude, fuck off, I told you no. Get a job. I think compassion can be a wonderful thing, but I think far too many of us have become too compassionate and have become naive due to that compassion. I think that it's coming from a very good place. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And we're on that fucking road, baby.